Hey readers! I think you all heard of the box of Pandora, but do you actually know the story behind it? So in this video I want to get into that story, and I also want to compare it to the Bible, because this story is actually quite similar to the story of Adam and Eve. So a few years ago I read this book, which is called Mythen van Griekenland en Rome, which means Myths of Greece and Rome. And it was written by H.A. Guerber. Yeah. And in this book I found the story of the box of Pandora. So let's get into the story. In the beginning, the world was created by the god Eros, who is also known as Cupid. He is the god of love. He created the world, the plants, the animals, and then he asked the two giants, the two brothers, Prometheus and Epimetheus, to create humans. So they created humans in the image of the gods, and they created them from clay, from the dirt, from the ground. Then Eros, the god of love, blew into their noses the breath of life. And then Minerva, the goddess of wisdom, she gave them a soul. So all was fine, all was good, but then Prometheus, he was actually not quite satisfied, because he wanted to give men more power. He wanted humans to be like the gods. He knew that for that he would have to give them the fire of the gods. But he also knew that the other gods would never agree on giving that to the humans. So he decided to steal it. He went up to the Mount Olympus, the home of the gods, and then he stole the fire and he gave it to the humans. Then at one point, Zeus, or Jupiter, he was looking down on Earth and he saw this beautiful light. And first he didn't really know what it was, but then he realized it is actually the fire of the gods. And then he was enraged and he knew immediately that it was Prometheus who gave this fire to the humans. So to punish him, he took Prometheus and he chained him to a mountain. Over there was a hungry vulture who would peck open the body of Prometheus and then eat his liver. But then in the night, the liver would grow back every night. And then during the day, the vulture could again open up the body, eat the liver, and then Prometheus would be in pain forever, every day, the rest of his life. But for Zeus, Jupiter, this wasn't enough. He wanted to punish the people also who accepted the fire of the gods. So he decided, together with the other gods, to create a woman, and they called her Pandora. They created her beautiful and curious and just irresistible for other men. At first they tried to give her to Prometheus, but he declined because he didn't trust anything coming from the gods. But then his brother Epimetheus, he was like, yeah, fine, I'll take her. And he fell in love with her and they had an amazing time together. They were in nature and everything was fine and everything was perfect. But life was also perfect for all the other humans, because there was no evil in the world. Until at one point Hermes, or Mercury, came by. He was on his way to deliver a package. He was carrying a box, and around the box was this beautiful golden rope with a very intricate knot. But the box was very heavy and Hermes was extremely tired. So he asked Pandora and Epimetheus if he could leave the box for a day at their place, and then he would come back later to pick it up to bring it to its destiny. And Pandora was like, yeah, fine, just leave it here. And she was very curious to what was in the box. And then Hermes left the box at their place and then he went off. And then Pandora told Epimetheus that she wanted to open the box to see what's in it. But then Epimetheus said, no, Pandora, we're not going to open the box. Let's go outside, let's have fun with the others, but just leave the box alone. For the first time she didn't obey Epimetheus, and then she said, no, I'm not listening to you, I will stay here with the box. And then Epimetheus, he was a bit disappointed, but he went outside to have fun with the others. And then Pandora was like, okay, maybe I can at least try to untie the knot. That won't hurt anyone, right? And as she was untying the knot, then she started to hear all these voices saying things like, have mercy, let us out, please let us out, have mercy with us. And after a long time trying to untie the knot, eventually Pandora succeeded and the knot was untied. But from that moment, then the voices became louder and louder. Help us, let us out, please have mercy. And then Pandora was so curious, and so she decided to just open the box a little bit. And then right at that moment, it was also the moment that Epimetheus entered the house again. And Pandora lifted the lid of the box, and then suddenly all these black or brown flying things came out. They were similar to moths. They came out like this whole swarm of them, and everywhere they touched Pandora and Epimetheus, their skin started burning and hurting, and for the first time in their lives they experienced pain and grief and sadness. And so these moths, they were actually evil that entered the world because Pandora was so curious and she opened the box. And as they were in pain and in grief because of this evil entering the world, then suddenly they heard one other voice saying, please let me out, I can help you, please, I can make things right again. And then Epimetheus was like, okay, well, it can't be any worse than what we already experienced, so open up the box again and let's see what else is in it. So Pandora opened the box for a second time, and then there was one white moth-like creature that came out, and he would heal the wounds of Pandora and Epimetheus. And so this white moth, it was actually hope that in this world full of evil, there is still hope that everything can be right again and everything can be healed. So this was the story of the box of Pandora, and it is very similar to the biblical story of Adam and Eve, but there are also important differences. So let's get into that. So let's go over the story again. First of all, the world is created by Cupid, but then the humans are created by giants, and there are different gods. And so this is a big difference with the Bible, because in the Bible there is only one God who created everything. He is almighty and he created the world and the humans. But in Greek mythology, these gods, they are not all powerful, they are limited. They all have their own quality, but they don't have one God that is ultimately good and creates everything, and another God that is ultimately evil and destroys everything. So from a Christian perspective, I believe that these Greek and Roman gods are actually demons. They're not all powerful, they're not all good, and when you read about those gods, they're scheming and plotting all the time, and they're fighting each other, and also they're dying. So they're not even immortal. Because, for example, the god Saturn, also known as Kronos or time, he devoured his children. And his children were gods. But one of his children, that is Zeus or Jupiter, he didn't devour because he was deceived by his wife. She hid Jupiter, and then Jupiter grew up and he grew powerful. So then Saturn was not able to eat Jupiter. But the fact that Saturn eats his children, eats the gods, that means that the gods are mortal. So they're not all powerful. So I think that's a big important difference. And since there's actually so much evil among those gods, I believe that those gods are actually demons. So then the thing about the giants. The gods Uranus and Gaia, who are heaven and earth, they had 12 children, the 12 titans, who were giants. And one of these children is Iapetus. And together with the nymph Clymene, they had Prometheus and Epimetheus, the giants. And so what is similar to this thing is that in the Bible there are also giants. And the giants in the Bible, also known as Nephilim, are the product of fallen angels and women. They got children and they got giants, Nephilim. But they were evil and God was not happy with that. And so he created a flood to clean the world so that this mess with fallen angels mixing with humans and giants and all these things were all gone. But here we see that theme too, that there is giants and giants mixing with women, or in this case a nymph. A nymph is some kind of feminine nature kind of creature, and then eventually the giants, they made the humans, but then humans weren't even created by one person or one power. They were created by Prometheus, by Eros for the breath of life, and Minerva for their souls. And so in the Bible, it's all God who created everything. Then there are these parallels of humans being created out of dirt, dust from the earth, and then the breath of life being blown into their noses by God, or in Greek mythology, Eros. And they were created in the image of God. So that's similar in both stories. Then also, the world was a perfect place. It was beautiful. There was no evil in both stories. In the Bible, it was the Garden of Eden, and in Greek mythology, it does not really have a name, but it was perfect. It was just perfect the way it was. Then, in Greek mythology, Prometheus wants the people to be as powerful as the gods. And so in the Bible, it is Satan who promises Eve that she will be like God when she eats from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. So in the Bible, it is Satan, the snake, who is deceiving Eve with this promise. But then in Greek mythology, it is Prometheus who is being portrayed as the good guy, that he wants the humans to be as powerful as the gods.
When we look at the Bible, there is also this theme of divine fire. For example, in Exodus, God is the burning bush talking to Moses, and later on, he is the column of fire leading the Israelis through the desert. Also, in the New Testament, Jesus is the one baptizing people in fire, not in water, but in fire. The point of following Jesus is to become like him. So Jesus baptizes in fire, and then we become like him. We become like God, since Jesus is God. And so what is also similar is that in the Bible and in Greek mythology, the one who created humans is the one giving the fire to the people to make them like God. However, the difference is that in the Bible, it is God who created humans in their totality, and he is the one giving the fire, so we become more like him. In Greek mythology, it is a giant who only partly created humans and then who stole the fire of the gods. He is not a god, he is a giant. He stole the fire of the gods in order for the people to become like the gods, not like himself, but like the gods.
There's also this theme of Prometheus being punished and suffering actually for the humans. And so the humans actually thanked Prometheus for a long time for his suffering, for the price that he paid for them. So that is very similar to what Jesus did. So Jesus suffered, and then he died, and then he resurrected, and then we are very grateful for what Jesus did for us. But then with Prometheus, then he would kind of die and resurrect because, you know, the liver would be eaten all the time, and then he would suffer a lot, and then he would kind of resurrect. So it is a little bit similar, but also it's a big difference. If you look at it from a Christian perspective, this story is mixing Jesus and Satan, as if Satan was the good guy and he sacrificed himself for us by making us as powerful as the gods, by giving the humans the fire of the gods. But when we look at the Bible, it was Satan who deceived Eve, and who actually, because of his actions and because of Eve being disobedient to God, evil entered the world. You could say, like, okay, so this is another attempt of Satan to deceive the world into making the people think that he is the good guy, that he is the one who tried to help us, tried to save us. But in reality, he is evil and he is deceiving, and he is plotting and scheming, just like the gods in this story. They're plotting and scheming all the time. Then the creation of Pandora was with the motive to punish the people, because it was a scheme of Jupiter, of Zeus. He wanted to punish Prometheus and Epimetheus and the humans. So Pandora was actually a punishment, and then the box came because of course Jupiter knew that Pandora would actually open up the box, and the box of evil, it was actually created by Jupiter and the other gods. So those gods, they created evil, and they intended evil to be in the world. And so that is completely different from the God of the Bible. He warned Adam and Eve, don't eat from this tree because you will die. He warned them for the evil, and he said, don't do it. But in the Greek mythology, we can see that the gods intended there to be evil. They actually wanted evil to be in the world. But then eventually, the thing that is similar to the Bible is that Pandora opened the box and Eve ate the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. So it's the woman who was disobedient who actually made evil enter into this world. But in the Bible then, Adam, he also ate from that fruit. But in Greek mythology, Epimetheus, he wasn't part of letting evil entering into the world. But in both stories, the woman, she was very curious and she was disobedient, and then evil entered the world. And then eventually the white little moth that would heal the wounds, and that was actually hope in this world full of evil, that is also similar to Jesus. It is God's promise throughout the Old Testament that eventually the Messiah would come to save humanity from evil, and the Messiah would eventually defeat evil once and for all. That's the promise of God. And then the Messiah comes, and that's Jesus, and Jesus heals the wounds and he brings the kingdom of God. And just like the little moth, Jesus heals and Jesus gives hope in this world full of evil. So there are some obvious parallels between Greek mythology and the Bible. If you noticed another parallel, please leave it in the comments below. I hope you learned something from this video. Please like and subscribe and help me to build my YouTube channel so that in the future I can make better videos and I can make more videos. And so for now, keep reading, guys.